The young and the restless spoilers shock a perilous dance on the edge. The news that Phyllis and Sharon had vanished from public view had sent shockwaves through the community. But contrary to the circulating reports, neither woman was missing. Instead, they were embroiled in a bitter, clandestine battle of revenge. For years, Phyllis had nursed a deep-seated vendetta for Heather, a grudge that had slowly festered into an all-consuming desire for retribution. Now, with the truth emerging that Sharon was an innocent bystander, one who had never been complicit in Heather's death, the stakes had been raised to a dangerous new level. Phyllis's obsession with vengeance had driven her to extreme measures. In her eyes, the balance of justice had been upset. She could not abide the thought of an innocent Sharon evading the consequences for actions she had never committed. Sharon, on the other hand, had become a symbol of untarnished virtue. Despite the dark rumors that swirled around her, Sharon's record was immaculate, and the law could not touch her because she had never taken a life. This reality was a bitter pill for Phyllis to swallow. The very idea that Sharon, her rival in this long and bloody feud, remained unpunished only fueled Phyllis's determination to erase her from the face of the earth. In a desperate bid to settle the score without drawing in collateral damage, Phyllis resolved to handle matters on her own. She knew too well that involving Daniel and Summer would only exacerbate the cycle of violence and revenge that had haunted her for so long. With meticulous planning, Phyllis devised a plan to deal with Sharon in isolation. Late one stormy night, when the world was shrouded in darkness and uncertainty, Phyllis set her plan in motion. Under the cloak of a moonless sky, she ambushed Sharon in a secluded location, a place where no one could witness the gruesome act she had in mind. The confrontation was swift and brutal. In the midst of their struggle, Phyllis managed to subdue Sharon with a vicious blow, rendering her unconscious for a brief, fateful moment. With cold determination, Phyllis bound Sharon and whisked her away, transporting her to a dilapidated mansion perched precariously on a mountainside. The isolation of the mountain retreat was both an asset and a curse. While it shielded Phyllis from immediate detection, it also turned the mansion into a stage for the next act in their dangerous drama. A stage where every creak of the floorboards and every gust of wind seemed to whisper of impending doom. Inside that foreboding mansion, Phyllis's resolve hardened. In the dim light of flickering candles, she vowed that Sharon would not survive the night. Every detail of her plan had been calculated, every risk weighed against the bitter satisfaction she sought. Yet, as fate would have it, the unfolding events were not entirely under her control. Unbeknownst to Phyllis, the disappearance of Sharon had already sparked alarms. Rumors began to swirl, and the search for both women intensified. Every move Phyllis made was under the watchful eyes of those determined to piece together the truth behind the vanishing act. Even as Phyllis prepared her final, fatal move, Sharon's resilience shone through. Though battered and bound, Sharon's mind remained alert, her will unbroken. In the depths of the night, as Phyllis advanced with her lethal intent, Sharon's instincts surged. Over the course of hours, the two women grappled in a relentless, visceral struggle. It was as though the very fabric of their beings was locked in a deadly contest of wills, each woman refusing to concede even an inch. Sharon's strength and cunning, which many had long admired, began to emerge as she fought tooth and nail against Phyllis's ruthless determination. The mansion echoed with the sounds of their conflict, a cacophony of grunts, the scrape of shifting bodies, and the muffled thuds as they exchanged blows. Phyllis's face contorted with hatred and anguish, each strike driven by years of pent-up rage over Heather's tragic fate. Meanwhile, Sharon's eyes burned with a fierce determination that belied her battered state. She was not the same person who had once been ensnared in a web of deceit and betrayal. She had grown wiser, stronger, and more resolute with every hardship. In the ensuing tussle, it was unclear who would ultimately fall. The scales of power and vengeance teetered precariously, hinting that the battle was far from over. Amid the chaos, every subtle move was laden with significance. Phyllis, desperate to finalize her dark crusade, attempted to use every trick at her disposal. She taunted Sharon, accusing her of evading justice and mocking the idea that an innocent soul could stand in the way of retribution. But Sharon, with a calm that belied the intensity of their conflict, countered each verbal jab with a physical maneuver that underscored her superior strength. Their struggle was not just a clash of fists and fury, it was a battle for legacy, for honor, and for the right to define what justice truly meant in a world riddled with betrayal. As the night deepened, the fight escalated in both ferocity and desperation. The mansion's cold, stone walls bore silent witness to the bitter contest, a grim tableau of two formidable adversaries locked in a struggle where neither was willing to yield. Outside, the search parties scoured the mountain, piecing together fragments of evidence that slowly revealed the truth behind the two women's disappearance. Every passing moment added to the growing sense of urgency and impending revelation as those in pursuit of justice and retribution inched ever closer to uncovering the secrets hidden within the isolated mansion. Phyllis's internal conflict also became apparent. Despite her relentless desire to exterminate Sharon, a small, nagging doubt crept into her mind. Was it truly right to let innocent lives, like that of Daniel and Summer, be dragged into this bitter feud? Even as she steeled herself to carry out her final act, the realization that her actions could have far-reaching consequences unsettled her. But the promise of avenging Heather, and the dark satisfaction of knowing that the truth about Sharon's untainted innocence would finally be overturned, drove her onward. The turning point in the battle came in a moment of raw intensity. As they wrestled, neither Phyllis nor Sharon could claim clear dominance. With every desperate move, the two women pushed each other to the brink. At one point, the sheer force of their struggle sent both crashing to the floor in a tangle of limbs and fury. In that suspended moment, with pain and determination etched on their faces, it became impossible to predict who would emerge victorious. The outcome of their confrontation held implications not just for their personal vendetta but for the entire network of relationships that bound their intertwined lives. In the end, the fight left both women battered, bloodied, and questioning the price of their relentless pursuit of revenge. While Phyllis's calculated cruelty had driven her to the mountainside in search of an irrevocable end for Sharon, it was clear that Sharon's tenacity had not been so easily extinguished. The battle was far from a simple matter of right or wrong. It was a collision of two very different visions of justice. Phyllis's singular focus on retribution clashed with Sharon's determination to preserve her innocence and integrity. And in the midst of their violent struggle, the question loomed large. Who would be the one to finally fall? As dawn crept over the rugged peaks, the world outside remained oblivious to the fierce conflict unfolding behind closed, crumbling walls. The missing status of Phyllis and Sharon had already set tongues wagging and sparked an intense search, turning their private battle into a public spectacle of mystery and scandal. Each heartbeat, each breath taken in that forsaken mansion added to the mounting tension, a tension that promised to reshape the delicate balance of power and truth among all who were entangled in this perilous dance. Ultimately, the struggle between Phyllis and Sharon was more than just a personal vendetta. It was a testament to the complexities of human nature, where loyalty, betrayal, and the thirst for vengeance intersected in the most unpredictable ways. In a world where every secret could be a weapon and every truth was contested by shades of gray, the outcome of their fateful encounter remained uncertain. And as the search for the missing women intensified, so too did the resolve of those who knew that, in the end, only one could claim victory over the other in this deadly game of cat and mouse. In the cold, foreboding silence of the mountain retreat, Phyllis's reign of vengeance teetered on the edge of collapse. Moments earlier, amid the turmoil of her struggle with Sharon, fate had taken a darker turn. Unbeknownst to Phyllis, Chance, a relentless and sharp-eyed investigator with a knack for uncovering hidden truths, had been watching. With instincts honed by years of following the labyrinthine trails of deceit and betrayal, Chance had pieced together her trail and, without hesitation, tracked her down. Under a storm-darkened sky, Chance raced through the winding roads that led to the isolated mansion perched on the craggy mountainside. His heart pounded in time with the rhythmic flash of lightning as he arrived at the scene, the wail of sirens soon piercing the night. Within minutes, a squad of heavily armed police encircled the mansion, their faces set in grim determination and their weapons trained on the mysterious building. Inside, Phyllis stood frozen in the dim, flickering candlelight of the mansion's parlor. Her eyes darted wildly around the room, panic etching deep lines across her face. The sudden intrusion shattered the eerie calm she had so desperately clung to. The echoing sound of boots and the harsh commands of the police reverberated through the stone corridors, leaving her no time to formulate an escape plan. In that moment, she was no longer the orchestrator of a carefully laid plan but a cornered fugitive, a kidnapper with a reputation now hanging by a thread. Caught off guard, Phyllis struggled to comprehend her predicament. How was it that the meticulous plans she had crafted, the endless nights of plotting against Sharon and the dark mission to exact vengeance had unraveled so abruptly? With the police closing in, their voices demanding answers and her hands trembling uncontrollably, Phyllis was forced into a silent confrontation with her own past. She had abducted Sharon, thinking it a means to end an old score and satisfy a relentless vendetta. But now, facing the cold, hard reality of her actions, the consequences loomed large. How would she explain herself when every piece of evidence pointed to her guilt? Outside, the situation escalated further. Nick, Faith, and a small cadre of allies had arrived on the scene, drawn by frantic messages and the growing alarm among those who had long been entangled in this web of hatred. They burst through the heavy front door just as the police were taking Phyllis into custody. Amid the chaos, Sharon, whom Phyllis had intended to leave to her fate, lay on the cold, unforgiving floor. Her eyes were wide with terror, and her breaths came in shallow, panicked gasps. The ordeal had pushed her into a state of utter hysteria, her mind a whirlwind of fear and confusion. Nick's strong hands gently lifted Sharon, murmuring soothing words as he and Faith guided her away from the scene. Their faces were etched with concern and relief. They had arrived in the nick of time to rescue her from the clutches of a fate she scarcely understood. Yet, even as they tended to her shaken state, the gravity of the situation cast a dark shadow over them all. The dramatic arrival of law enforcement had turned a private vendetta into a public scandal, and every eye now was on the unraveling threads of a once-hidden conspiracy. Inside the now silent mansion, Phyllis was led away, her every step heavy with the burden of her past misdeeds. As the police secured the building and began to question her, the once indomitable force of hatred that had driven her for so long now seemed to waver. In the sterile interrogation room under harsh fluorescent lights, Phyllis was forced to confront not only the physical reality of her situation but also the moral abyss into which she had plunged herself. Each question from the detectives cut through the bravado she had once maintained. How could she justify the kidnapping? How could she explain her relentless pursuit of revenge against Sharon, a woman who, in all fairness, was blameless in the tragedy of Heather's death? As the minutes turned into hours, Phyllis's defiant posture gave way to a vulnerable introspection. The weight of her actions pressed down on her, and she began to realize that her hatred had become an all-consuming force that blinded her to the collateral damage inflicted upon everyone around her. The harsh, accusing eyes of the law were not the only ones scrutinizing her now. In her solitude, she was forced to face the truth about the vendetta that had defined her existence. Was this endless cycle of retribution truly worth the cost of her soul? Could she ever hope to escape the prison of her own making, a prison built brick by brick with the mortar of unforgiving vengeance? Back outside, as the storm subsided into a tense, uneasy quiet, Nick and Faith gathered with other members of the rescue team. They watched as the news of the dramatic intervention spread like wildfire, and the public began to question the tangled loyalties and hidden sins of those they once trusted. Sharon, though deeply traumatized by the ordeal, was now safe and tended to by those who cared for her. Yet, even in her fragile state, there was an unmistakable glimmer in her eyes, a strength that had carried her through the darkest moments. Her survival was a testament to her inner resilience, a stark contrast to the ruined lives that had been shattered by secrets and lies. In the days that followed, the repercussions of that fateful night rippled through the corridors of power. The press seized upon the scandal, and whispers of Phyllis's misdeeds transformed into headlines that threatened to dismantle long-standing alliances. Within the confines of a sterile holding cell, Phyllis wrestled with her demons. In rare, unguarded moments, she questioned whether the path of unyielding hatred was truly sustainable. The legacy of her vendetta, once so fiercely defended, now loomed as a bleak reminder of the destruction it had wrought. Could she ever find a way out of the cycle of vengeance? Or was she destined to remain ensnared in the very web of hatred she had spun? The moral and emotional toll on all involved was profound. Jack, Diane, and the remnants of the once impenetrable Abbott dynasty watched in dismay as scandal and betrayal threatened to erode the foundations of their world. The tangled truths of loyalty, identity, and familial honor were now up for debate in hushed boardrooms and across the dinner tables of the powerful. In the midst of this chaos, the fates of individuals like Phyllis and Sharon served as stark reminders of the precarious balance between justice and retribution. And so, as the final chapters of that night were written, one question remained suspended in the air like the remnants of a storm. Would Phyllis ever let go of the hatred that had defined her existence? Or would the relentless pursuit of vengeance continue to consume her until nothing remained but a hollow shell, a relic of a time when retribution was the only language she knew? The answer, as elusive as the truth itself, lay hidden in the shadows of her soul, a mystery that would haunt her and all who were drawn into her orbit for years to come. In the dim light of dawn, as the authorities pieced together the fragmented evidence of that harrowing night, the legacy of hatred and betrayal hung heavy over everyone involved. It was a stark, unforgiving reminder that in the ruthless game of power and revenge, the line between hero and villain was blurred beyond recognition. And in that moral twilight, the future of Phyllis, Sharon, and the fractured families they left behind remained as uncertain and volatile as the shifting winds on the mountain peaks.